Chapter 42. The Addams mansion was never quiet, but on Christmas Eve, the chaos reached an entirely new level. The enormous bell in the mansion's highest tower let out a deep, resounding gong, shaking the very foundation of the house and signaling the official start of the day's festivities. The halls erupted with a cacophony of screams, yells, and laughter as the younger Addamses bolted through the corridors like wild animals, their excitement knowing no bounds. Tyler barely opened his eyes before the sound of children shrieking reached his ears. A loud bang from the hallway made him groan as he sat up, rubbing his face. He glanced over to see Wednesday's side of the bed already empty. Of course, she was up before him. It didn't surprise him in the slightest. Dragging himself out of bed, he walked into Wednesday's massive, Gothic-style closet to change into his usual black and white attire, simple enough for the day, at least until the ball that night. As he buttoned his shirt, he noticed Wednesday standing by the door, already dressed in her usual long black dress. By Addams' standards, it was a rather plain choice, but the way she carried herself made it clear she needed no excessive adornments to command attention. "Come," she said simply. "Breakfast is starting." Tyler nodded, though Hyde was already stirring in his mind, eager for the madness that awaited them downstairs. As soon as they entered the grand dining hall, the full force of the Addams family morning chaos hit Tyler like a freight train. The long, extravagant dining table was covered in plates of unusual breakfast fare, black pancakes, blood pudding, roasted meats, and an assortment of dishes that most people wouldn't dare put on a plate first thing in the morning. The scent of strong, bitter coffee mixed with something distinctly burnt. Children were climbing over chairs, shrieking and laughing as they chased each other around the room, occasionally throwing food at one another. A small explosion erupted at one end of the table, sending a plume of green smoke into the air, but no one even flinched. At the head of the table, Gomez and Morticia sat with their usual elegance, seemingly unbothered by the absolute riot happening around them. Grandma Addams cackled as she shoveled food onto a plate, and the various aunts and uncles, including Fester, Greg, Calpurnia, and Adele, were engaged in lively conversation, unfazed by the wild energy of the younger generation. Tyler sat down next to Wednesday as Pugsley reached across the table to grab a stack of charred waffles, shoving nearly an entire one into his mouth before speaking. "You guys should have seen what I got at the market," Pugsley said through a mouthful of food. "A taxidermy bat with 3 heads. It's perfect for my room." "Did you see the skeleton marionettes?" Adele asked, smirking as she sipped her tea. "I had them all customized to look like various historical figures who met horrible fates." Leah, ever the observer, chuckled. "You Addamses sure know how to celebrate the holidays." Judah, sitting beside her, was watching the younger children with a mix of amusement and mild horror as a pair of twin Addams boys were using their forks as makeshift weapons. "I don't think I've ever seen a breakfast this intense." "You get used to it," Tyler muttered, though Hyde was absolutely reveling in the madness. Tyler blinked as his vision blurred for a moment. When he refocused, his smirk widened, and his posture straightened. Hyde was in control. "Oh, this is delicious," Hyde purred under his breath, scanning the room with gleaming eyes. "The chaos, the destruction, the unbridled energy, I love it." Fester, who had been enthusiastically digging into a plate of something unidentifiable, noticed the shift in Tyler's demeanor and let out a hearty laugh. "Oh ho! Looks like Hyde's out to play." Wednesday arched an eyebrow but said nothing, simply sipping her black coffee. "Hyde," Gomez greeted cheerfully, cutting into his steak. "I trust you enjoyed our little shopping trip last night?" "Oh, immensely," Hyde grinned. "But tonight is where the real fun begins." Pugsley perked up at that. "Are we finally getting to the part where we chase people with torches?" "No, dear," Morticia corrected gently, as though she were reminding him not to forget his gloves. "That's for New Year's." The table carried on as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Hyde leaned back in his chair, soaking in the pure, beautiful chaos of the Addams household. This was going to be a very interesting Christmas Eve. Lurch, the ever-faithful butler, moved through the halls with his slow, looming presence, overseeing the final preparations for the grand Christmas Eve ball that night. The disembodied hand, thing, scuttled across tables and banisters, directing the other servants as they draped thick, Gothic garlands laced with thorns and deep crimson roses. The chandeliers were adorned with dark candles, their flames flickering eerily despite the absence of wind. The grand dining hall was being transformed for the evening, its long, Gothic table set with intricate, obsidian-colored silverware and goblets brimming with ominous-looking elixirs. Enchanted snowflakes, black, of course, drifted lazily from the ceiling, vanishing just before touching the ground. Everything was in perfect, macabre harmony. Meanwhile, the family had dispersed into their preferred activities. Outside, explosions and snowball warfare. The younger Addams children, along with Calliope, shrieked with delight as they waged war in the snow. Traditional snowball fights were far too mundane for them. These were laced with small explosives, smoke bombs, and an occasional vial of something labeled caution, may bite. Pugsley, ever the mastermind, stood in the middle of the chaos, directing strategy like a battlefield general. Calliope, take the left flank. Felix, launch the stink bombs. The children cackled as one particularly potent explosion sent up a flurry of blackened snow, briefly covering their view of the mansion. Calliope giggled wildly as she rolled away just in time to avoid a minor shockwave. In the grand parlor, the elders gather. Endora Addams, grandmama, sat in her favorite oversized chair by the grand fireplace, her gnarled fingers clutching a steaming goblet of what she referred to as witch's remedy. She cackled as she regaled her siblings, and the elder Addamses with tales of curses gone wrong and spells cast with unintended side effects. And then, of course, the poor fool sprouted feathers everywhere, she wheezed. Couldn't walk through a doorway without molting. The other great aunts and uncles burst into raspy laughter, some toasting their drinks, while others murmured in agreement about the lost art of a well-executed curse. In the drawing room, a game of wits and deception. Morticia, Gomez, Uncle Fester, Uncle Greg, Cousinette, and several other relatives sat in the dimly lit drawing room, engaged in an intense game of Addams-style poker. The stakes were high, favors, bizarre heirlooms, and the occasional deed to haunted property sat in the growing pile in the center. Uncle Fester cackled as he laid down his cards. "Ha! Read 'em and weep." Gomez smirked, setting his cigar aside. "Fester, dear brother, you should know by now, never underestimate an Addams." With a flourish, he revealed his hand, sending the room into a chorus of groans and chuckles. Cousinette chattered excitedly, causing Greg to sigh. Yes, we know you had a winning hand too." The greenhouse/menagerie, a conversation among monsters. Amidst the towering carnivorous plants and peculiar creatures of the Addams greenhouse, Wednesday, Tyler, Adele, Calpurnia, Judah, and Leah stood in the eerie glow of bioluminescent fungi. Cleopatra, the largest of the meat-eating plants, shifted slightly, her vine-like appendages curling in interest. In the nearby tank, piranhas darted back and forth, their sharp teeth glinting. Kitty, the adolescent lion, yawned lazily, his massive form stretched across the stone floor as though he were a simple house cat. Calpurnia, standing near the large greenhouse window, kept an eye on the children outside, her expression unreadable. Breaking the comfortable silence, Adele turned toward Tyler with a knowing smile. She sipped her latte before announcing, "Good news, Tyler, Miss Lauren Hill, also known as Laura Gates, has had her death penalty set. She won't be able to order you around anymore." Tyler let out a relieved sigh. Finally. Good riddance. But then, his posture shifted, his smirk widened, and his voice took on a darker, more delighted tone. "Now, only my cockroach will be the one ordering me around," Hyde murmured, locking eyes with Wednesday. Leah, visibly confused, glanced around. What just happened? Am I missing something? Wednesday, as impassive as ever, merely took a slow sip of her coffee. Tyler is a Hyde. Leah blinked. A what? Calpurnia took it upon herself to explain. Don't be embarrassed, Leah. Hydes are incredibly rare these days. You usually find them in mental asylums or maximum security prisons. Hyde grinned, his sharp eyes glinting. I'm a murderous, psychopathic monster. Want to see my monster form? Before Leah could react, Tyler regained control, exhaling through his nose. Ignore him. His monster form hasn't been let out in a while. Leah, still trying to process what she'd just witnessed, struggled to find the right words. Judah, however, smirked. If you want to let the beast out, how about during the hunt this afternoon? Hyde immediately perked up. Hunt? Of course, Judah nodded. Hunting is a must in this family. I'm sure everyone would be delighted to see your monster form, Tyler. Hyde let out a low chuckle. Yes. Finally. The others exchanged knowing glances. It was going to be an eventful afternoon. The hunt begins, Hyde unleashed. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie golden glow over the snow-covered Addams estate. Though the grounds were blanketed in white, the landscape was anything but serene. Strange, twisted trees loomed in the distance, their bare branches swaying despite the absence of wind. Dark figures, various creatures bred by the Addamses for sport, lurked in the shadows, awaiting the inevitable chase. The Addams family, clad in their preferred hunting attire, long, Gothic coats, fur-lined capes, and intricately designed weaponry, gathered at the edge of the clearing. Each held their preferred instrument of the hunt, crossbows, blades, and, in Pugsley's case, a series of handcrafted explosives. Tyler stood in the center, rolling his shoulders as the hide stirred restlessly inside him. The promise of bloodshed, the thrill of the hunt, it called to him in ways nothing else could. His breaths grew uneven, his fingers twitching as if the transformation had already begun. Gomez, ever the enthusiastic host, clapped his hands together. Ah, there's nothing quite like a winter hunt to bring the family together. I do love a good chase, Adele mused, adjusting the grip on her dagger. It's been ages since we've had fresh prey. Judah smirked, glancing at Tyler. And you, my friend, have been given the honor of the first kill. Hyde didn't need to be told twice. A wicked grin split Tyler's face as his back arched unnaturally. A guttural growl escaped his throat, sending shivers down the spines of the more human visitors present. His veins darkened, pulsing with a monstrous energy, his eyes widening as his pupils dilated into eerie, soulless pits. His bones snapped and reformed, his limbs elongating grotesquely. His fingernails sharpened into claws, curving like talons, his skin stretching over his now monstrous frame. The transformation was complete. The Hyde was unleashed. He was large, hunched over, yet still towering above the others, his limbs thick with muscle, his skin a sickly gray hue. His eyes bulged unnervingly, glowing with a yellow, predatory light, and his teeth, jagged, uneven, far too sharp, gleamed like a wolf's in the dim light. The children let out delighted cheers. He's horrifying. Calliope squealed, clapping excitedly. Felix whistled. He's got the perfect amount of grotesque. Pugsley, ever the connoisseur of all things disturbing, nodded in approval. I love the claws. Very intimidating. From her place beside the others, Wednesday merely smirked. She had seen Hyde before, of course, but watching him under the light of the Addams family hunt, that was something else entirely. Morticia, observing from a distance, placed a hand delicately over her heart. What a magnificent display of raw monstrosity. It brings a tear to my eye. Ah, to be young again, Gomez sighed wistfully, twirling his sword. Hyde lifted his head, inhaling deeply. The scent of prey filled his senses. Something was hiding just beyond the tree-line, a creature bred specifically for the hunt, its massive, horned figure barely concealed by the dense fog. Judah grinned, raising his rifle. Shall we begin? Hyde let out a guttural snarl, before lunging forward, disappearing into the trees with terrifying speed. The hunt was on. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the Addams estate. The once pristine snow was now disturbed with deep claw marks, scattered footprints, and the occasional splatter of something dark and unidentifiable. The air was thick with the scent of the hunt, sweat, earth, and the lingering metallic tang of spilled blood. Hyde stood victorious, panting, his chest rising and falling with exhilaration. The beast he had been pursuing lay lifeless at his feet, its massive, horned body still twitching slightly. He flexed his claws, his grotesque grin widening as he relished the moment. From the distance, applause erupted. The Addams family, standing along the tree line, watched with their usual morbid fascination. "Magnificent," Gomez declared, beaming as he clapped. "You tore its throat out beautifully," Morticia praised, tilting her head as she examined the corpse. "Such artistry in the brutality." Uncle Fester wiped a theatrical tear from his eye. "He reminds me of myself at that age." Calliope giggled. "That was the best one yet. Can we keep its skull?" Judah smirked at Hyde, lowering his rifle. "You certainly didn't disappoint." Hyde, still high on adrenaline, let out a deep, guttural chuckle, before exhaling sharply. His monstrous form began to shift once more, bones cracking, muscles retracting, skin pulling taut as he shrank back into something human. Within seconds, Tyler stood in Hyde's place, his breathing still heavy, his hands stained with blood. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, then looked down at the remains of his prey. "That," he muttered, voice husky from the transformation, "was fun." Wednesday stepped forward and threw Tyler a large black bathrobe. "You'll want to wash up before the ball," she remarked dryly, eyeing the state of him. Tyler smirked. "Why? You don't think bloodstains would be a good fashion statement?" She arched a brow. "Not unless you plan to clash with the decor." Adele, ever the fashionista, gave him a once-over and wrinkled her nose. "As much as I admire the feral beast aesthetic, Tyler, perhaps something a bit more refined for the evening?" Gomez threw an arm around Tyler's shoulders, already steering him toward the mansion. "Come, my boy. A proper gentleman must be both a savage and a sophisticate." With that, the family made their way back inside, the thrill of the hunt now giving way to the grand festivities of the evening. Like, comment and subscribe to be notified for updates in the series.